Prime Minister Mark Carney likely won't get a chance to mend fences with U.S. President Donald Trump anytime soon. That is this morning's breaking news. Trump is saying again this morning that he won't meet with Carney to talk about his decision to break off trade talks. And Carney says he hasn't reached out to Trump either.
The President and I have not spoken since he took this decision. We are ready to have discussions when the Americans wish to have those discussions. But we're not, obviously, we don't dictate the timing of that.
Carney faced question after question about trade talks with the U.S. as he wrapped up an international summit today in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. The questions included whether Canada should pursue talks with the White House and if Trump is even interested in making a deal with Canada. Carney and Trump will both be taking part in another international summit later this week. And Trump himself is making it clear that he will continue giving Carney the cold shoulder.
Whether it's provincial or Canada itself, they all knew exactly what the end was. The Prime Minister knew, everybody knew. The Prime Minister knew what the end was before it went.
Will you see him in APEC? Do you want to meet with him?
I don't want to meet with him. No, I'm not going to be meeting with him for a while. No. I'm very happy with the deal we have right now with Canada. We're going to let it ride.
That is Trump speaking to reporters on Air Force One earlier this morning. There is a lot of cabinet noise there, or cabin noise, but Trump is saying that he has no plans to meet with Prime Minister Carney at an upcoming summit this week in South Korea, and that he would, quote, let the existing deal with Canada ride. He added no new details to his threat to add another 10% to the tariffs hitting Canada. Rafi Boudjikanian is traveling with Prime Minister Carney. He tells us Carney's news conference this morning was the first time reporters have been able to ask him questions since Trump broke off trade talks with Canada on Thursday night.
We learned that Prime Minister Mark Carney himself has no idea where this additional 10% in tariff hikes could go. That was in answer to one of my questions. He said, we don't have any details on that. He also said that he has not spoken to Donald Trump since the news of the trade talks breaking off. I did note that when one of my colleagues asked, have you tried reaching out to him? Have you tried texting him, for example? Because we have been told in the past by the Prime Minister's office that he and Donald Trump tend to text. So he kind of sidestepped that aspect of the question, just focused on the fact that they have not spoken. Numerous times he said, I'm ready to resume talks when the U.S. are inclined to do so, kind of putting the ball back in the court of the United States. Earlier today, Donald Trump on his way to Japan, Trump, of course, is also in this part of the world right now, said aboard Air Force One that he's not interested in speaking to Canada for a very long time, and that he's quite happy with the deal that Canada and the U.S. have right now. One of my colleagues asked him, how did your relationship with Donald Trump go south? Because we've seen Mark Carney go to the Oval Office. We've seen him be quite chummy with the U.S. president. We've seen them exchange pleasantries. We've seen Trump say, Carney's a good guy, that kind of stuff. Carney kind of said, you should ask Donald Trump that question, or that's a question for Donald Trump. I'm paraphrasing him here. So I thought that was an interesting response from the Prime Minister. Of course, a lot of the emphasis for Canada during this trip is how it wants to diversify its trading partners. All of Carney's talking points before we got the questions were about his trip to Malaysia, about how he wants to reach a free trade agreement with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, by the end of next year. He suggested, in answer to the questions about Trump, that, the instability with the United States is one more reason for Canada to be reaching out to this part of the world. We're not sure that he's going to get to speak to Trump by the end of this trip. Both men will be in South Korea for the next big summit in this part of the world, APEC, or the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. At some point, before all this stuff had happened, Carney had said, I look forward to seeing President Trump there, or I'm sure I'll see him there. I mean, you might see him there, but it doesn't seem like the two men will speak at all. I also note that Carney emphasized it is the Canadian government's role to negotiate with the United States. In French, he went as far as answering my Radio-Canada colleague's question about Doug Ford by saying that Canada had pointedly chosen not to run ads in the United States. He didn't directly say that he himself asked for to pull the ad. He didn't go that far, but that is how he chose to answer a question about whether or not Ottawa wanted the ad pulled. Of course, the other thing that stands out from this news conference is that Prime Minister Carney intends to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping when both men are in South Korea. We knew that there was an intention to do that from the Prime Minister's office, and now we heard it from Carney himself that he's expecting that will happen.
And that was Rafi Boudjikanian reporting from the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur. Well, joining me now with more on what U.S. President Trump is saying about Canada this morning is Katie Nicholson. So, Katie, welcome. Good morning. We know, of course, that you're going to be heading down to D.C. quite soon, in the next couple of days, to start your new role in our bureau there. But before you leave, take us through the latest here and the implications of all of this as well.
It's so clear that President Trump is still very stung by this Ontario ad, even though it has now officially stopped airing after the weekend. But clearly the damage is done this morning again. He complained about it with reporters, and again, we heard the claims that it was a fake ad. In addition to more complaints about how Canada has been dealing with the U.S. throughout this trade process. The reason, of course, the pretext that ad was, many say was a pretext. The whole reason here that he's sort of put this 10% ad on here is this, or 10% tariff on is this ad, he says. So, you sort of see that really sort of take over some of his answers yet again. Reporters were trying to figure out, okay, so what is this 10% tariff? Right. Is it going to apply to is it the sort of the Section 232 tariffs? Is it going to be on top of the IEEPA tariffs? Like what is this? When does it kick in? So this is some of the clarity that reporters are trying to get from him today, and still Donald Trump still couldn't stop talking a little bit about this commercial. So here's a little bit of the answer that he supplied today.
I don't like that. That's dirty pool. And you can't do that. And let me just tell you, they shouldn't have done it. And they've apologized, and they said, we're going to take the ad down. Well, they did it, but they did it very late. They let it play for another 2 nights, and now they took that ad down. So I don't know when it's going to kick in. We'll see, but I don't really want to discuss it.
So there you go. We don't yet know when or if this new 10% tariff will kick in. We don't really know what the guidelines are. Is it going to apply to materials that are non-CUSMA compliant? We don't know any of that. What we
no
do
more
know,
clarity.
No more clarity. What we do know is clearly this is still a very big issue for Donald Trump, and we know that this ad hit the airwaves at a time that is very sensitive for him, because we know very soon the Supreme Court is going to look at one section of the tariffs that he brought in and whether or not they are going to hold, whether or not they are legal.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit more about that, because the justices will be hearing arguments very, very shortly. Talk to us about this case. What's at stake here for Donald Trump and his tariffs?
So this starts November 5th. This is actually 2 cases that they're going to be hearing, and they really center on the IEEPA tariffs. So these are the emergency powers tariffs that were brought in, arguing they were necessary because of fentanyl going across the border and illegal immigration. What the argument here is that Donald Trump has overstepped his authority as president. Does he have, the questions that it's attempting to answer, does he have the authority to apply these tariffs under IEEPA as the president? And the second question is, was it constitutional? Because the argument goes, it's actually Congress that decides matters of tariffs and taxation. So all of this kicks up around November 5th. This is so important to Donald Trump. You could say that tariffs have been sort of the central piece of his policies since taking office the second time. He has talked again and again about how tariffs have made America this red-hot economic engine. He has talked about what an effective tool it has been in negotiating peace deals. These are such a core central part of his identity as a president this time around. So if the Supreme Court ends up ruling with the lower courts, which have so far said, yes, these are not legal illegal. These do not fall within the bounds of this presidential powers of the Emergency Powers Act, then, well, this is definitely going to change the calculation for those who are attempting to continue these trade negotiations as well. I bet he'll be continue to be angry about that.
Wide-ranging implications. November 5th, of course, also the one-year anniversary of him winning the White House once again.
Another momentous day for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Katie Nicholson, thank you for this. Of course, good luck as you head down to D.C. We'll be watching and listening to your work out of our Washington, B.C. bureau. Thank you this morning.
You're welcome.